The story begins with our two main protagonists called Asta and Yuno, who were abandoned as infants in the distant village of Hage. In a world where everyone can use magic, Yuno grows up with tremendous magical ability while Asta grows up with none, a trait he is often mocked for. One afternoon, Asta begs sister Lily to marry him, but she flatly rejects him as usual. Yuno also points out that as a nun, Lily cannot marry him. The church children are huge fans of Yuno and his magical ability, but mock Asta's lack of them in return. Yuno similarly dismisses Asta when he acts out of hand, and Lily remarks that the two were once inseparable, but an incident caused Yuno to become rather cold and distant. After being humiliated at having no magic, Asta trains his heart out in a nearby forest, confident in his physical abilities, and he swears to be the next wizard king. The following day, Yuno alongside some other kids go to their town's grimoire tower, where once a year individuals their age receive their own grimoires, which gives Asta hope that he too could one day use magic. Everyone receives their grimoires one by one, but everyone's attention turns to Yuno when he receives the fabled four-leaf clover grimoire, known to be used by the first wizard king famous for its luck-giving properties. However, Asta is devastated when a grimoire is not assigned to him and is once again mocked by everyone around him. Undeterred, he continues to train hard, swearing that he will catch up to Yuno in no time. Meanwhile, Yuno comes face to face with two nobles who were also present at the ceremony. Jealous that they were upstage, they attack him, but their blasts are effortlessly repelled by his wind magic. Suddenly, a man who introduces himself as Rivchai the Chain Magician attacks all of them, restricting them with his namesake chains. He steals Yuno's grimoire, as four-leaf clover grimoires fetch obscenely high prices in the black market. Asta appears to Yuno's rescue, but despite his physical training, he is unable to keep up with Rivchai's chains. So in turn, he is captured, and Rivchai openly mocks and insults Asta once more, and when he reveals that he senses absolutely no magic in him, Asta is majorly disheartened. Right before Asta gives up completely, Yuno speaks up, declaring Asta to be his greatest rival. A revitalized Asta gets up, and to everyone's surprise, a black grimoire bearing the mark of a five-leaf clover appears out of thin air. Where a three-leaf clover represents faith, hope, and love, and a four-leaf clover represents home, within the five-leaf clover resides a demon. From depths of the black grimoire, a black blade comes forth. 10 years ago, Asta and Yuno were inseparable. Though Asta is the same as he always was, Yuno was quite a crybaby. The one thing they have in common is that they both admire the Wizard King, whom they hear about from the stories that Sister Lily would tell them. Even as a child, Asta wished to be the Wizard King so he can raise funds for their church. He struggles to be of help to those around him so he can be worthy of the title, failing to find anything he can do. Yuno is tasked by their father to deliver an important letter the next town over, much to Asta's annoyance. However, after Yuno delivers the letter, he is beaten by a drunkard who steals his pendant. Yuno begins to cry, but Asta appears and relentlessly attacks the much larger man. Frightened by his persistence, he gives up and leaves, and Yuno remarks that Asta always seems to do the impossible. Back in the present, Yuno watches as Asta's black blade nullifies Rivchai's chains, leaving the latter in a state of shock. Asta then declares that he will be the Wizard King even without magic. He ends up defeating Rivchai, and afterward he excitedly shows Yuno his own grimoire. Remembering their promise from when they were younger, Yuno once again declares Asta as his rival, and to prove to everyone that anyone can become the Wizard King, even if they're an orphan from a backwater town. As the sun sets, the two bump fists as they begin their rivalry to become the next Wizard King. We then come to discover that centuries earlier, a great evil that threatened to wipe out the world was defeated at the hands of a great mage, who has come to be known as the first Wizard King. This title would be passed down through the generations and assisted by the Magic Knights, who continued to keep the peace. The Magic Knights are comprised of 9 squads, and to become a Magic Knight or the Wizard King is an aspiration of all. After the events of Rivchai, both Asta and Yuno are training hard to participate in the upcoming Magic Knights exam to join one of the 9 squads. Although Father Orsi is against Asta participating, the Wizard of the Grimoire Tower reasons that it is okay for him to go, and Sister Lily agrees. The next day, Asta is joined by Nash, one of the kids from the orphanage, who says that his goal of becoming a Wizard King is pointless, as in his words, poor orphans like us aren't allowed to dream. Unfazed by his pessimistic attitude, Asta tells him that anything can be done if you don't give up, which he seems to prove after reducing a giant boulder to rubble with nothing but his sword. The night before they are set to leave, the orphanage has a huge potato-themed feast to send them off. Father Orsi jokes that he'll soon see Asta again regardless, which infuriates him. The two leave early the next day, and Nash says that he'll join the Magic Knights one day too. Sister Lily is overcome with emotion at seeing 2 beloved members of her family leave. The two begin their long and arduous journey towards the Clover Kingdom's capital, using their magic to survive, and racing along the way. And after several days they arrive, ready to take the Magic Knights exam and to take their first steps to become the Wizard King. Asta and Yuno enter the castle town of Kika and make their way to the Magic Knights examination site. Yuno attracts attention for being a wielder of the 4-leaf clover, while Asta attracts attention for being loud, much to Yuno's exasperation. Once there, the examinees are swarmed by anti-birds, which flock to those with weak magical energy. While Yuno has nary a feather on him, Asta is hilariously bogged down by an entire flock to everyone's amusement. He runs headfirst into Yami, the captain of the Black Bull's Night Squad, a squad famous for its reputation of collateral damage, and is regarded as the worst among all the squads. Yami threatens to kill him after after Asta calls him old, which amuses Sek, another examinee who introduces himself to Asta. Soon, fireworks signal the start of the ceremony proper and the various captains of the Magic Knight squads enter the arena, and Sek explains them one by one to Asta. Captain of the Golden Dawn, called William, has been touted as the strongest among all the captains, and is the man closest to becoming the Wizard King. Yami also arrives fashionably late. William begins the exam by giving all the examinees a wooden broomstick, but because Asta has no magical ability, he is unable to get it to fly. Similarly, several of the exams require magic control, which Asta fails one by one. However, the final exam is announced to be a combat round, and Sek volunteers to fight him, thinking Asta is easy pickings. Asta wishes him a good match, but Sek shows his true colors by calling Asta a dirty peasant, enraging him. Sek encases himself in a magical barrier meant to protect against outside attacks, while simultaneously firing off barrages of magic bolts, which he brags is a great offensive and defensive spell. The fight begins, and Asta defeats Sek in a single rush, cutting through his barrier with his black blade, startling everyone who had expected Asta to lose. As Asta stands over the unconscious Sek, he declares that he isn't here to play around but to become the next Wizard King. The interests of the various captains are piqued, especially Yami, who senses that Asta has no magical ability at all and his feat was purely due to his physical prowess. The fights progress smoothly until Yuno is challenged by Salim, a noble who sees him as an inferior peasant. However, despite Salim using his so-called greatest attack, Yuno easily defeats him with his wind magic. Afterwards, the examinees are called forward one by one, and the captains will raise their hands to indicate their interest in having them join their squad. The examinee can then pick from among the captains who raise their hands. However, if none of the captains do so, then the examinee is deemed to have failed and is forced to retire home. The selection process is surprisingly strict, with few getting any offers at all. However, once it is Yuno's turn, every single captain raises their hands, stunning everyone, as it is thought only nobles could join the Golden Dawn and Silver Eagles. Wanting the shortest path to be the Wizard King, Yuno elects to join the Golden Dawn. It is now Asta's turn, but to his horror none of the captains raise their hands. Asta is heartbroken, is soon heckled to leave the selection area, but Yami comes down to face him. He tells him such is the cruel reality of not having any magical power and asks him if he still intends to be the Wizard King. When Asta reaffirms his goal, Yami is impressed and extends him an invitation to join the Black Bulls, and tells him that maybe someday he can be the Wizard King. Asta and Yuno meet and say their goodbyes as they now go their separate ways. Yami grabs Asta and throws him through a portal created by Finral into the Black Bull's base, where he welcomes him to the kingdom's worst magic squad. Asta watches in awe at a chaotic scene unfolding before him at the Black Bull's base. Yami tells the squad to stop destroying the base, but he smashes a wall, demolishing it in the process. Yami introduces them to Asta, and the members are surprised he hails from Hage Village. He and his Finral introduce him to the members one by one. With the introductions concluded, Magna, who is skeptical over Asta's ability, gives him a trial to see if he is worthy of a Black Bull's robe. Fortunately, all the trials are a test of Asta's physical abilities, which he easily clears. However, for the final trial, he challenges Asta to either absorb or deflect his fire magic head-on, and only then will he recognize him as a Black Bull. Asta then brings out his black blade, piquing the interest of the other Black Bulls. Magna fires off a giant ball of flame, which Asta is narrowly able to deflect back at him. Asta is afraid he killed his own teammate, but he is relieved when he sees Magna come out unscathed, having nullified his own magic at the last second. He runs over to Asta, greatly impressed at how he sent his own magic back at him. But he is even more impressed when he learns Asta has no magic whatsoever, calling him a true man. The other Black Bulls join in congratulating him, and as promised they give Asta his Black Bull's cloak, which he proudly accepts. His membership now official, he's warmly welcomed into the Black Bulls. While the group celebrates, a girl that's also a new recruit to the Black Bulls looks on, thinking of Asta as nothing more than an insect. Asta is shown to his room, and although it is shabby and run down, he is happy to have a room to his own for the first time in his life. Magna then reminds him to write a letter back to his family in Hage. Likewise, Yuno is shown to his far more lavish room in the Golden Dawn, where his instructor Klaus disrespects him because Yuno is not a noble. Back in Hage, Orsi, Lily, and the rest of the orphanage receive news of Asta and Yuno's acceptance into the Magic Knights, and they are thrilled. Orsi goes to spread the news throughout the village, while Lily silently wishes the two good luck. The next day, while Magna gives Asta a grand tour of the Black Bull's base, they run into Noel, Asta's fellow recruit, and a member of the royal family. Sensing no magic in Asta, she dismisses him, calling him an insect. To show them the difference in their power, she fires off an orb of water towards him, but it inexplicably curves and hits Magna instead. An irate Noel abandons her Black Bull's cloak, calling it the worst squad in the kingdom, before leaving. Asta later encounters Noel in the forest practicing her water magic. He then sees the issue with Noel. Although blessed with great latent magical power, her spells somehow do not hit their mark. This is a trait for which she is scorned by her family, including her brother, the captain of the Silver Eagles. When Noel sees Asta, she is embarrassed and tries to blow him away with magic, but it goes out of control and she ends up trapped in a vortex of water. Since Asta is the only one able to safely extract her, Yami throws Asta towards it, nullifying it with his black blade. Fearing she will be mocked once more, Noel is instead surprised when Asta praises her magical abilities, saying that if she practiced she'd be invincible. The rest of the Black Bulls reassure her that her failure to control her magic is no big deal. All of them have flaws, and one or two flaws does not make you any less of a person. Noel accepts Asta's hand in camaraderie, learning that this squad will accept her for who she truly is. Asta wakes up early to perform daily chores around the base, but realizes this is no different from when he was at the orphanage. Over breakfast, he asks the other members what it means to be a magic knight, and they each give their own personal selfish answers, which worries Noel as she wonders if she truly is a fit in the Black Bulls. Yami arrives at the cafeteria and calls Magna to go with him on a very important mission. Asta asks if he can go, but Magna says they're not allowed to bring kids along with them. It turns out that their important mission is a game of poker with the mayor of Saucy Village, Seihai. After losing everything to his royal flush, they return home. They inform Asta and Noel of their first mission. As punishment for losing against the mayor, they are tasked with dealing with a pack of wild boars roaming Saucy Village. Asta points out that they should have nothing to do with this, as it was Yami who lost, but he threatens to kill them if they don't go. Noel is worried she might not be of much help due to her lack of magical control, but Magna reassures her that he'll be there to clean up if things go awry. With Finral unable to create a portal to places he's never been before, and Asta and Noel's inability to ride magic brooms, Magna is forced to bring them to Saucy on his customized broom, the Crimson Cyclone. They experience a turbulent ride, but meanwhile, several mysterious individuals have also arrived at Saucy to search for a magic stone. Among them is a man with a scar across his face, talented in ice magic. After dealing with several bulls at the outskirts of Saucy, Magna tells the two of them of how, in his youth, he was a troublemaking delinquent, but he was set straight by the mayor, Seihai. It was he who encouraged him to become a magic knight, despite his peasant background. When they arrive near the village, Magna is horrified to see a mist enveloping the entire town. He tells Asta to use his black blade to cut through the mist, and the three make their way into the city center, where they rescue the villagers from being impaled by icicle shards. Here, they see a scarred man named Heath, accompanied by 3 other mages, who threaten to eradicate them. When Heath says that the peasants in the village are nothing more than lowly beasts, both Asta and Magna's pride at coming from villages are hurt, and they swear to defend them with their lives. Although he is surprised at Asta's ability to cut through his magic, he begins targeting the villagers instead. Asta and Magna frantically attempt to defend the villagers, but they soon begin to be overwhelmed at the onslaught of Heath. Magna, running dangerously low on magical energy, throws everything he has, but the ice keeps coming. Heath tells them he is willing to let them go if they abandon the villagers, which Noel considers for a moment, as she feels she is holding back Asta and Magna. However, when a girl grabs the hem of her skirt, asking her to save them, she has newfound resolve, and a new magic appears in her grimoire, the Sea Dragon's Lair. She casts a huge, swirling vortex of water that defends herself and the villagers around her, as Heath is astounded at the sheer power of her magic. Heath is surprised at Noel's magic, and despite his repeated icicle volleys, they fail to penetrate her barrier. Asta takes the opportunity to mount a counterattack, but Heath cleverly makes him slip on a strip of ice. He then calmly walks towards Noel's barrier and begins freezing it bit by bit. Magna, aware of his natural advantage against Heath, grits his teeth as he knows Heath's magical capacity far eclipses his. However, Asta returns and tries once again to take down Heath, but to no fruition. Magna, inspired by Asta's relentless attacks, emerges from the barrier once more. He fires off his final attack, the Prison Death Scattershot, a massive valley of flame bolts, but Heath successfully repels it. Just when all hope seems lost, Asta appears behind Heath and uses his black blade to reflect the scattered flames back towards Heath and his cronies. Heath finds that the flames don't go out on their own, and he desperately tries to extinguish it with his ice, but Asta delivers the finishing blow, knocking out Heath. Magna restrains the remaining members, but one of them manages to escape. Asta collapses from his injuries, but Noel looks on, remarking that even though he's loud and annoying, he is a little cool. They later try to interrogate Heath, but realizing he has been captured, he kills himself and his cronies. This shocks the 3 bulls, especially Asta, who is disgusted at their blatant disregard for life. They then bury Seihai, while a tearful Orphan declares he will be a magic knight one day too, despite being a commoner. Magna and Asta encourage him to follow his dreams, and an anti-bird suddenly swoops down and pecks at Asta. They notice that in its beak, it is holding a magic stone, presumably the target of Heath. The orphan boy says that it was Seihai's old charm and offers it to them as a reward. Meanwhile, a cloaked man learns of Heath's demise and concedes ownership of the magic stone for now. He touches a large gravestone, remarking that the resurrection of their lord is close at hand. On the collar of his robe rests the symbol of the Golden Dawn. The 3 return to the Black Bull's base, and despite the death of Seihai, Yami commends them for defending the villagers. For their efforts, the Wizard King has awarded them a gold star, bringing the Black Bull's grand total to -30 stars, compared to the Golden Dawn's 70. He hands them their paycheck of 200,000 coins, an amount Asta has scarcely seen in his entire life. He plans to send a portion back to Hage, but Vanessa invites him and Noel out shopping the next day. They head out on Vanessa's magic broom to Kika, the same venue as the Magic Knights exam weeks prior. They see Finral, Gauche, and Charmy all spending their salaries in their own way. After Vanessa purchases some medicinal herbs, she brings Asta and Noel into a hidden alley where the black market is located. Noel is initially hesitant to partake in possibly illegal dealings, but she is convinced to participate when Vanessa says that certain artifacts could help her control her powers. Meanwhile, Sek is also in the alley, losing in a game of cards against an old lady. He trudges back to complete his mission, but he remains bitter about being in the praying mantises. He sees Noel and Vanessa, and enamored by their beauty, tries to hit on them, but he is rebuffed. Asta returns from buying novelties, and he reunites with Sek, who is jealous that Asta gets to spend time with 2 beautiful women. Suddenly, an old lady cries out for help as her card winnings were stolen. In response, Asta jumps into action. Asta chases the thief throughout the alleyways, while Sek follows closely behind him. Riding atop a magic cloud, the thief is shocked by Asta's persistence and is puzzled at how he can keep up despite him riding on a cloud. Knowing the cloud is made of magic, Asta throws his sword at it to disable it. The thief crashes to the ground where Sek lies waiting to capture him. However, he is stabbed with a poisoned dagger and fears he will soon die, but Asta encourages him to live on. Vanessa arrives and treats the poison, and Sek leaves with the thief, bidding Asta, Noel, and Vanessa farewell. The Black Bulls return the stolen money to the old lady, and they warn her to be more careful in the future. As they leave, it is revealed the old lady is not an old lady at all, as the disguise is shed, revealing it was the Magic King Julius himself all along. He is impressed by Asta's anti-magic blade, and when he looks to the sky, he sees another interesting prodigy, Yuno. Yuno, alongside his co-recruit Mimosa and his instructor Klaus, are tasked with escorting Salim towards the Heart Kingdom. Salim, Yuno's opponent during the Magic Knight's exam, inquires to his beginnings, and Yuno speaks of his hometown of Hage. Suddenly, a black cloud covers the sky, and when Yuno goes closer to investigate it, he is attacked by magic bandits. Although caught off guard, Yuno eventually defeats the band, but Klaus is skeptical as the bandits somehow targeted only Yuno and not Salim. Salim, intrigued by Hage, elects to visit the village despite Klaus' protests. When they arrive, Sister Lily, Father Orson, and the rest of the orphans happily go out and greet Yuno, as well as their esteemed guests. They invite them to stay the night, and although Klaus objects, Salim insists on staying. Klaus is annoyed that he, a noble, must be subjected to being in such a run-down village. They enter the church as Lily prepares a potato-themed dinner. As everyone dines on Hage's best potato dishes, Yuno learns from Lily that both he and Asta have been sending back money. To his annoyance, Asta has been sending back more than him, so he promises Lily to send his entire paycheck next month. When Salim asks for more water, Lily goes out to fetch some from a nearby well. Before she leaves, Salim drapes her in his cloak, saying that it is chilly outside. However, Yuno hears a struggle and races outside and finds that Lily has been taken away, presumably by the bandits. Klaus orders him and Mimosa to leave with him and Salim at once. Despite Klaus' orders, Yuno goes by himself to look for Lily, defeating the bandits one by one until he finds her underneath the skull of the giant demon. The bandit leader orders Yuno to surrender his grimoire, threatening to burn off Lily's face if he refuses. Yuno feigns a retreat, only for Klaus to reveal himself, attacking the bandit squarely in the head with a magic spear. Klaus explains that using Mimosa's magic, Truth Flower, they were able to ascertain Salim's true intentions. He specifically asked for Yuno to escort him, so that he could lure him and have his revenge. Klaus says he will overlook Yuno's insolence for now, since Salim was the one responsible for the incident. Although he praises him, he says he has yet to acknowledge him. Mimosa laughs, knowing that Klaus simply isn't being honest with himself. They elect to release Salim and his men, but when Salim attempts another attack on Yuno, Lily uses her water magic to wash him away, leading Klaus to remark he'd like to recruit Lily into the Magic Knights as well. Meanwhile, the last missing bandit was taken care of by Julius, who had followed Yuno all the way there. He is finally found by his advisor Marx, who demands that he return to do his work immediately. When Yuno, Mimosa, and Klaus return to the Golden Dawn base, they learn they have also received a star from the Emperor. When they question how such a simple mission would have warranted a star, William explains that when Salim was captured, he ended up confessing to several corruption charges against his father. When Julius learns of the appearance of a dungeon, he decides to leave its exploration to certain individuals. Meanwhile, at the Black Bull's base, the group tries to decide on a name for the anti-bird that constantly follows Asta around, and they settle on Luck's suggestion, Nero. Yami arrives and informs them that the Wizard King himself has asked for Asta to explore a nearby dungeon. Asta is elated that the Wizard King asked for him personally, and he is pumped up to explore the dungeon. Yami has Noel accompany Asta and Luck to serve as their squad leader. They travel via Finral's portal, and they make a short trip towards the dungeon. After exploring for a while, Luck senses a powerful enemy using his magic sense, and he casts his magic, Thunder Boots, to travel towards it, leaving Asta and Noel to fend for themselves, much to their dismay. Noel is self-conscious that she is alone with Asta, and hurriedly makes her way throughout the room, but she is caught unaware by a man-eating plant. Asta frees her momentarily, but he, too, is soon caught in its vines, and they are brought to the monster's gaping maw to be eaten. Suddenly, magical needles strike out at the monster, releasing them both. Noel comments on the extraordinary control of magic, and they turn to see Yuno alongside Mimosa and Klaus of the Golden Dawn. Yuno smiles, remarking to Asta that he has finally repaid his debt. And this brings the anime to an end. Comment for part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.